there, and welcome to the barrel hall at Sassicaia, arguably Tuscany and probably Italy's most famous wine estate. So the wine I'm tasting at the moment is Sassicaia 2016. So the estate here in Bolgheri, in the Maremma region, to the south of Tuscany, heading towards Rome, has been making wine since 1945, largely a result of experiments that the Marchese, Incisa, della, Rocchetta started by planting vines back in the early 1940s actually. 1942 his first experiment started, with the first vintage of wine being made here in 1945. And the Marchese's experiments, he was doing something completely different. He was originally from Piedmont, so was used to wines that age, the Barolos, the Barbarescos there. He had a love of the wines of Bordeaux, and he wanted to grow Cabernet Sauvignon here in Italy. And when he and his wife inherited the estate here, he had plenty of land to find suitable terroir and climatic conditions to produce Cabernet Sauvignon. So he managed to find the estate in the hills at about 400 metres above sea level, where the soil was well-drained, stony soil. I mean, the morphology here is quite diverse. There's underlying limestone here with clays as well. But a soil type that was close enough to Bordeaux that he could grow Cabernet Sauvignon successfully here. And despite other locals telling him that these wines were no good, he had the vision to pioneer with this, and made a wine that, in honesty, was only drunk by the family here on the estate up until the late 1960s. And it was in 1968 that they first commercialised Sassicaia, and it was an instant success. I mean, it was one of the first Super Tuscan wines, but very soon it grew to be world famous, and eventually it gained its own Bolgheri Sassicaia DOC. This wine is from a single DOC. The wine has to be at least 80% Cabernet Sauvignon. In 2016, this particular wine was 85% Cabernet Sauvignon with 15% of Cabernet Franc. And there's always just those two varieties in the wine. The wine is aged for 2 years in barrel, and the winemaking here is meticulous. I mean, everything is grown in small plots. Lots of wine are produced according to those small plots, and they're kept separate up until blending, which is literally just a few months before bottling. As I say, the wine ages in oak, about a third of which is new, and the other thirds being second and third fill oak, for up to 2 years. It has to be a minimum of 18 months, but it's more likely to be 24 months. So a hugely complex wine. So let's have a look at the 2016. This is a wine that has a little bit of age on it. We're looking again at a colour that is, it's actually, it's quite a dark ruby, but it's not that deep. It's starting to lose a bit of the depth of colour, and there's a head towards a sort of a cherry red, maybe even touches of brick red at the rim there. Not losing a lot of colour, but just a little. As a swirl wine, it's got relatively good alcohol. It's throwing some tears on the glass. That's not surprising. I think the wine will have concentrated tannins. It should be very viscous. So let's have a look at the aromas, shall we? Wow, the ethereal aromas that are Sassicaia are just starting to open up here. There are beautiful elements of truffles, drifted raspberry notes. There are notes of wild vegetation, sort of lavender, hints of heather, fennel, those sorts of slightly wild notes. And an underlying, really rather vibrant, I would say raspberry because of that sort of spicy note, raspberry, perhaps a loganberry note. And perhaps a little hint of anise as well. There's plenty going on these aromas. They're relatively powerful, but they're not bursting from the glass. They're just slowly opening very subtly and very elegantly. So let's have a taste. Now this is a wine that's been open for a couple of hours. Thank goodness for that, because it's been opening up, and again at its core there's this lovely raspberry note. Everything's underpinned by really lovely fresh acidity that's absolutely giving a tingle to the front of the tongue. The alcohol, probably at 14%, still seems balanced. There's not a weightiness or a chewiness as a result of it. And the other thing is the tannins are so fine. There's a silky smooth finesse to them. There are delicate hints that are just starting to show touches of truffle towards the end there. But the raspberry note has some lovely lifted aromas. There's almost a slight rose petal note to the wine. And again, this sort of slightly wild note, sort of hinting at wild vegetation, what French would call garrigue, the sort of and thyme, sort of rosemary sort of notes. There's so much going on here. There's an elegance, there's a real concentration, but the wine isn't heavy. I'd say this was probably medium bodied at best, but just a concentration of these very fine flavours. Now, this is Cabernet Sauvignon, but this is Cabernet Sauvignon made with a delicacy, picked probably relatively early just to make sure it's not overripe. And then there is just this ethereal note right the way through it. The oak is incredibly well integrated. I mean, the drying tannins, there clearly is cedary oak in there, but it's completely wound in with the fruit so beautifully. And the flavours are long, and there's a freshness to the finish that encourages you to want to have another glass, very definitely. So that was Sassicaia 2016, a real treat. Sassicaia at a stage where clearly this wine still has 10, 15, probably 20 years ahead of it at least, but a wine that's just starting to open and is just starting to show its potential. Really fabulous to be able to try, and I'm being very privileged to be here. So thank you very much for joining me. Do please consider subscribing and following us on our channel. Do leave any comments you have in the comments box below. We'd love to know what you think about the wines, about your experience with them and the tastings that we're doing, anything that relates to that. I will leave a link in the comments box so that you can see listings for 2016 Sassicaia globally on the Wine Searcher website. If you want to share the video with your friends, please feel free to do so. But most importantly, do please try and make some time and come and join us for another tasting again in the near future, won't you? Thank you very much. Bye for now.